This is a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup sound experiment. We're looking to find the perfect way to hear Reese's so you'll buy more of them. Here we go. Reese's, 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 Reese's. Hey, get out of here, you little stinker.
Reese's.
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 Peanut Butter Cups. That breathy one sounded very creepy, am I right?
From the Delta Sky Club
Welcome back, Miss Klein.
to the Jet Bridge, Delta Airlines relies on 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to power operations and serve customers faster. Together, we're putting 5G into the hands of ground staff so they can better assist on-the-go travelers with real-time information throughout the airport. This is elevating customer experience. This is Delta Airlines with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, he was an aggressive lawyer willing to bend the rules to help his clients. Was he willing to have witnesses killed to help his cases? We'll talk about the podcast Criminal Attorney from Wondery. Joining me to get this done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life.
To get this done.
Yes.
As opposed to get that done.
Yes.
I think you just changed the script that we've had for the past 10 years.
It's written that way.
What?
Who writes the script? You do.
Joining me to get that done.
Yes, and more.
But I think you said joining me to get this done.
Oh, okay. Joining me to get that done and more.
No, it's fine. Leave it.
Is that better?
No, leave it.
Okay.
No. Spice it up a little bit.
All right, I'm also going to spice it up even more by changing the order of the intros. Are you ready?
Oh, for fuck's sake. All right.
There's a reason.
There is?
And also with us is our captain of all things cynical, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hi, Rebecca.
And finally, joining us from On Location is certified private investigator and pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca. Yeah, I am like right next to Newark. I'm on the side of the highway in a hotel in New Jersey.
Why?
Well, I wanted to immerse myself in this podcast and feel like I was really there.
Yes.
No, I actually went skiing at a mall in New Jersey in East Rutherford at the American Dream Experience, which coincidentally is owned by the same person who bought Class Action Park.
Wait. The American Dream Experience, it doesn't have did you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps up that mountain inside the mall or what?
Well, no, the mountain is called Big Snow or something.
Okay.
But the mall that it is inside is called American Dream.
Okay. Weird.
You go into the parking garage and then you literally get out of your car, get your skis and your ski bag, walk into the mall, walk through the food court area where there's this open thing in the middle. And there's little kids on the bottom level, riding these weird stuffed animal things around.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing that just says Big Snow, just like it would say for any store in the mall. And you walk into this thing and you're like, this is so weird.
This does sound like the American dream.
Yes.
It's 100%.
You walk through another door and you're in a locker room. You put your stuff on and there's an indoor ski area.
Is it weird? You're making it sound real weird.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's super weird. It's like my ideal skiing climate. It was 28 degrees.
Uh-huh. No wind.
No wind. No ice on the ski slope. There was a self-service wine bar outside.
Wow.
Self-service?
You're never skiing outside again, are you?
That's what I said. I said, I am never skiing anywhere but inside a mall.
You
Help
did just say
yourself to this
outside.
alcohol and then ski downhill.
Wait. You said
This is
outside,
totally-
as if you were outside.
Is that on the ski hill?
Fake
Or is that
No, it's outside in the mall.
so you can go and hit some Panda Express and then jump on the slopes?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't recommend the barbecue at the mall.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
Lance and I both felt a little sick after the barbecue at the mall, but it was ladies' night. And I was like, hey, look, it's ladies' night at the barbecue place outside the ski area in the mall.
The only barbecue you should get at a mall is a McRib sandwich from McDonald's.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they probably have a McDonald's. They also have a skating rink and a water park.
So it's almost like the Mall of America, but in New Jersey.
Yeah.
How big is the hill? Are you dropping like 80 feet or?
No, it was bigger than I thought it was going to be. There's actually a sign at the bottom that said, danger, steeper than it looks.
Oh.
Intermediate or advanced skiers only.
Huh.
Oh.
Really?
It's a black diamond trail at the mall. It goes right by Spencer's.
How long are you on the hill? Do you go down for like 30 seconds or 2 minutes or?
Like a minute or so. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I don't ski that fast, but even me, I was skiing a little. I felt like, wow, I'm really fast today on this mall ski area in New Jersey.
How was the snow?
It's weird. Well, so it's interesting because I've seen these ski areas where they have like the fake snow that they ski year round, but this was real snow. It was a little stickier and it was very poofy snow. It was like very fluffy. And apparently they bring snow in and out several times a week. They also had a terrain park where people could do jumps on the side of on one side.
They bring in snow.
They must have a snowmaker somewhere, right?
Yeah, it was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. And I was just like, I think just the novelty of it, I'm like, I got to do this.
Yeah. I feel like I got to do it now.
Yeah.
Sticky and poofy.
Yeah.
Sticky and poofy snow.
Just like Panda Express.
Better than Cannon Mountain, icy and killer.
This is why I don't like skiing on regular ski mountains because there's ice.
In New
there's
England,
like
yeah.
other things. There's cold. I don't like to ski when it's under 20 degrees. This
No.
was perfect.
No, and
Nature.
I'll say for anybody who's listening who lives like in the Western United States, if you learn to ski in New England, you can fucking ski anywhere because it's like skiing in a goddamn minefield. Like the snow could be gorgeous and perfect, and then you just could hit a patch of ice at any moment and kill yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I will be reporting back on like this in more detail in an upcoming Leave It to Bricker, but I needed to make sure I could live through it first.
Wow. Are you going back?
I'm not going back. Lance is back today, but I am here working for Crime Writers On.
Okay, great.
I'm going to go back and explore the mall more later tonight because I didn't get to see the extent of what else was in the mall because I was so mesmerized by the ski area.
I should have lent you my
My guess
Banana
is
Republic
stores
card.
and restaurants.
Yeah, pretty much.
Little kiosk where you can get a new watch battery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a new iPhone screen.
Yeah, a lids.
Sunglass hut.
Definitely a lids.
Yeah, you'll know if Aunt Anne's is there. Aunt Annie, where's the pretzel place?
Oh,
Aunt
I
Annie's.
love the pretzels. Those pretzels are really good.
There's an Aunt Annie's in the Logan Airport.
Oh,
Yeah, and I only know that because I got it once. I was like really desperate, and they sell, you get like sauces to like dip your stuff in. I didn't know that.
Cookie sauces? Is that what you're
Yeah, different
talking
kinds of
about?
sugar, essentially.
Yeah.
well, I will report back on that. I'll see what's in there.
Take photos of every chain store you pass.
There's nothing but chain stores.
I know, but
There
every
are
like famous
There's
chain.
no mom and pop store at
No.
a mall.
Yeah.
That's what
No.
Main Street is for.
Fox Run Mall, man.
It's only mom and
Fox Run
pop.
Mall is an anomaly, though.
Yeah,
Fox Run Mall's got some weird stuff.
I know.
Yeah, it does.
As weird as a ski slope.
Well, it's got like it's got a Jamaican convenience store.
Yeah.
At least it did last time I was there, which
Yeah.
is just weird given that it's Newington, New Hampshire.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, good for the people running it, but like,
100%.
it's not weird that there is a Jamaican convenience store. It's weird that there's a Jamaican convenience store in New Hampshire in
the mall.
In the mall.
Yeah, in the mall.
You have to go to the mall. But yeah, I mean, it's more interesting than like Aeropostale or
Yeah.
American Eagle Outfitters or whatever the hell that's called.
Yes. Yes. All right. So, Kevin, before we start taping our podcast, which is, I think, time to do, what's coming up on future editions of Crime Writers On?
Okay, on Thursday, we're going to be going back to our review of Flint Town. Remember
Yes.
that documentary?
My Roman Empire.
Your Roman Empire. You're still wondering what happened to that girl cop and the weird man cop that she was with.
Yes.
Then next week, on Monday, we're going to be talking about the new podcast, Number One Dad.
All right.
And it's number one with the pound sign, the hashtag. It's going to be a disaster to try to look up.
It's
when you
actually very
search, but-
easy to
Oh,
look
is
up.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then next week, Wednesday night, we're going to be doing our live recording of Only Murders in the Building, the season 4 finale, and that podcast will be in your audio podcast feeds on Thursday.
Wow. You got a lot of work to do that
Be a
night.
late night for me. Yeah.
Wow. Poor Kevin.
But it's worth it. It's a lot of fun. We don't get to do that often.
We
and
don't.
You'll be able to see that if you're a patron on Patreon. You'll get to see the bonus our after show. But for everybody, we are going to attempt to make this available on Facebook, but this is a whole new platform for us, and there's 50 things that could go wrong as far as on the tech side.
Yeah.
So
I doubt it. It's going to be amazing. Why don't we practice first, and then you'll know if it works?
Well, if all of a sudden, like, we suddenly wound up in your YouTube feed for some reason for 10 minutes, that's why. So,
okay.
I mean, I could hit go right now, and we could see. I think it's too late, but we could have done it just to see what happens.
All right, we should do that sometime. Okay, you guys ready to talk about this podcast now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's get that done. Kevin, I'm going to drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
You couldn't just represent celebrities. If you were a criminal defense attorney, the biggest business was with kingpins, people heavily involved in gangs and drugs. And one of those clients would soon catch the attention of an upstart FBI agent and set Paul Bergrin on a collision course with his former employer, the federal government.
Former prosecutor Paul Bergrin made a name for himself as an aggressive defense attorney handling difficult cases involving celebrities and hardened criminals in New Jersey. But as his reputation grew, so did suspicions about the lengths he'd go to get his clients off the hook.
But the victim is nowhere to be found. Then they find something. A receipt for a flight the week the victim is supposed to testify. And one more clue that seemed to hold the answer.
A business card from Mr. Bergrin. That's just one of the things I had heard.
An FBI investigation found that Bergrin wasn't just representing his unsavory clients, he was directing their criminal activities. They learned the lawyer was overseeing drug trafficking, directing an escort service, and involved in money laundering and witness intimidation. It left agents wondering how far Bergrin would go to get an acquittal.
All I knew is he had mentioned something about getting rid of me, something like that. Bergrin had mentioned to get rid of me. And I'm thinking, I've got a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old in bed asleep.
From Wondery comes the podcast Criminal Attorney. Host Brandon Jinx Jenkins introduces us to the voices of those who knew Bergrin, those who investigated him, and those affected by his actions. Why would an accomplished lawyer risk everything and find himself, and not his clients, pleading his case before a jury? Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from Criminal Attorney, so if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So, Toby, they found a crooked lawyer to do this podcast about. Can you believe it?
It's hard to find those.
Yeah.
But when you do, they're pretty good subjects. Yeah, no, I think, it's a promising start because there's a lot of facets to this. I mean, I think that's kind of the strength of the podcast is that Bergrin sort of got his hands in a bunch of different things. Some, I guess, more nefarious than others. They talk about like a triple threat in baseball. Is that right? Or
5-tool player.
Yeah,
triple threat, I think, is if you're on Broadway.
Yes.
Okay.
You can sing, dance, and
there's
act,
a triple threat position in basketball.
There you go.
So that's probably enough trying to explain sports metaphors. I mean, he has his hand in a bunch of different things and is sort of exploiting them in different ways. And the sort of consequences for the people he's around vary depending on what kind of role he's playing. So I think that's the strength. It also turns out to be paradoxically kind of a weakness as well.
So, Laura, you compared this to a show that you watched on a streaming service, right?
Yeah, I said this is like if the Lincoln Lawyer sort of went off the rails and went from being like a actual criminal defense attorney to one who is a criminal. Even just like looking at the artwork for this podcast, I'm like, oh, this looks like the Lincoln Lawyer because it's like criminal attorney and he's like standing by the car. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because I've watched different versions of that show. Obviously, there's the movie version and then there was the series, which was on Netflix that I watched. Because you hear about how he segues into this. He begins, as a prosecutor trying murder cases down here in Essex County, New Jersey, where I am right now. And he's a hotshot and he gets recruited to go up a level to the federal level, to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Newark. And then things don't go as planned. Obviously, he gets there and he's putting up like pictures, like, what do you have, like a Playboy calendar or something that he tries to like hang up?
When he worked for like the prosecution?
When he was a prosecutor and you're like, yeah, okay, so maybe this guy isn't necessarily going to stay here. But, you can kind of get that feeling that, okay, he doesn't really fit. It's like square peg, round hole sort of situation. But then he's like the man that everybody calls. Yeah. And once he segues over into going onto the defense side, you're like, okay, this guy is definitely somebody like ripped from the headlines. You know what I mean? And also one of the things that happens right before he kind of goes over and flips sides is that two cops that he used to work with when he was like a lower level prosecutor get brought up in corruption charges, and he goes in and does like career suicide and gives them like a character reference. And you're like,
in court.
And you're like,
always a good move.
Not good. So I could see this being like a fictionalized show on a streaming service at some point if it's not already in the works.
Such as Better Call Saul, which is
Better Call Paul.
There's actually an episode called Better Call Paul, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, Kevin, there's a lot of intertwined stories in the podcast. The first few episodes especially, it sort of is like over here and over here and over here. How do you think that works?
Well, one thing in particular I thought did really well was we have this story about Sean, the FBI agent, and her informant, Chemo. That's Chemo with a K. I was like, oh my God, what an unfortunate nickname. But that's his last name. And so while we're getting the origin story of Paul, we're going back and forth between this A and B plot, which I think was actually pretty good because much too often, like when you have this, it gets presented sort of as a standalone story, or you hear a lot about Paul and then you jump in with a lot about Chemo and Sean's case, right? Which sort of takes out of the main narrative, and kind of for me, like the story ends up losing its momentum because we go from one point of view to all of a sudden to this other point of view, and we don't come back to the main story for a long time. So I like that it's able to balance it like that, but it also like creates this tension that we've got two plot lines that are going to collide at some point, as opposed to what often happens is we just have a story about one big character who's about to bulldoze his way through a series of different anecdotes and different characters where they come up just in time to be a bowling pin. Sean's case, I mean, the way that she walked him through the sting and everything like that, that's really interesting. And you don't really want to cut that short. But halfway through, I'm like, oh, this is good that they're doing it this way, because then I'm interested in sort of both sides of this.
Rock, meet Hard Place.
And so, it's that crossroads and you have to pick now. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to think about this. You need to think about this now. Decide here and now what you're going to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I can tell you if you become an informant, we'll do everything in our power to protect you forever.
Toby, the thing that I was listening to when I heard that whole Chemo story was like, there was a sort of a sub thing that like the podcast doesn't really address, which is that the FBI fucking sucks with the way that they treat informants, right? So what were your thoughts on that part of the story?
Yeah, well, I almost thought that could have just been its own podcast, quite honestly, but the thematics would have been a lot different. But it's this guy, Chemo, who, according to the podcast, is like sort of a quote unquote good kid, although he has a sawed off shotgun in his bedroom. But he gets roped into doing this like crazy dangerous stuff for the FBI. So he doesn't go to jail. He flips. So he's going and doing undercover drug deals, wearing a wire.
Will really gave him hell and thought he was a snitch.
And he wasn't wrong. Sean started to panic.
And we're listening to it thinking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I mean, I remember a couple times looking at some of my coworkers saying, should we go in? Should we go in?
Sean and her team sat waiting for those 4 words from Chemo, the signal to storm in. This is fucked up. But it never came.
You kind of get the reality of what it's like to be an FBI informant from his story, which is basically he gets the goods on this guy, Will Baskerville, who Sean tries to flip. And that's where Paul kind of comes into the story and convinces him not to flip. And then Will Baskerville, because he's in a cell with another guy who has a similar situation, they figure out that Chemo is sort of the common element there. And that so he's probably the informant that's getting them. So it puts his life in jeopardy, right?
His life was always in jeopardy. Let's be real.
Yeah. I mean, his life is always in jeopardy, but now he's just like, he's got a target on him.
Yeah.
And, he ends up lying at one point, and the FBI is like, well, you fucked up. You can either go and do witness protection, in which case you'll never talk to anybody you ever know again, or you can hang out in Newark and see how it goes. And he doesn't last very long. And it's 100% because the FBI got some leverage on him and used him. And then because he lied once, we're like, you know what? You're done.
Yeah.
There was no way for him to recover that situation, even though he keeps coming to them with information. They're just like, well, we can't trust you.
Right.
And in the end, he's murdered in broad daylight on a busy street.
Yeah. The thing that really occurred to me when I was listening to this part is, what were they going to do with him anyway? They gave him like this impossible choice at the end of witness protection or staying there and maybe getting killed. What would have been the end game if he had continued to be an informant? They would have had to either eventually send him to witness protection or get him killed. Like, there's no good end game for these informants that are being used by the FBI. You know, it's like,
well, the third choice is you go to jail. So
yes, but
I mean,
where if you're an informant, you're going to be killed.
yeah.
I mean,
Like if you're a kid and you're given that, like you're going to do a ton of time in jail, or you can be a snitch, and you're like, well, I don't want to do a ton of time in jail. And then once you commit to it, you know, the die is cast.
Mm-hmm.
So, Laura, would you have watched a reality show based in an escort service in New York with like Wall Street guys having girlfriend experiences with fancy ladies?
by the way, Laura just put her glasses on in order to answer this
I'm
question.
watching it right now.
Yeah, I think I probably would have, because I would have been like, oh, that's interesting. But like the King of Pimps, I was like, I would watch the King of Pimps. I don't know what would happen to the King of Pimps after his show came out, quite honestly. It sounded like something out of like an episode of The Sopranos.
Yeah, as this whole thing did in some ways.
This entire, like all these things, I'm like, this is a John Grisham novel. This is The Sopranos. This is The Lincoln Lawyer. Like all of this sounds like not even real life in this podcast. But, you know, hearing about this, you hear about this guy, Ron, who's getting a meeting with the King of Pimps, who wants to make this show, New York Confidential. And the guy is there, and the star escort, who's his girlfriend, is there, Natalia. And she's talking about how she was going to be an actress, but now she can make a lot more money doing this. And then the way they drop in. And then the fourth person at the table was Paul, the lawyer.
Yes.
And you're like, are you fucking kidding me right now?
The negotiations seemed to be going well. Jason Itzler, the owner of this establishment and Natalia's boyfriend, seemed to really crave the spotlight. He referred to himself as King of the Pimps. He was a flashy guy with thick black eyebrows and a custom fur coat. He wanted to grant Ron all kinds of access to the fancy loft and to its clientele.
I think that show was kind of problematic from the beginning.
You
but
think?
It was fascinating to hear about the fact that they really thought they were going to develop it to the point that they're like, we're serious enough. We're going to have our lawyer here with us.
That could be on TV. Like, I could imagine that on like Bravo or some shit right now.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
Kevin?
Yeah, well, on
HBO.
HBO, they mentioned HBO had a show called Cat House, which took place in a legal brothel in Nevada.
Yeah.
So they were like, I'm not going to say that was the proof of concept for that, but the idea that guys who can afford, $1,000 an hour with a high-end escort
That's my
are
rate, by the
also
way.
the people who are going to say, yes, put my face on camera so everybody can see that is me. But I also enjoyed the fact that the producer also knew, they're like, oh, this is great. Because you realize this is one fucking season because they're never going to let anybody come back and do this again. He's like, you know, this whole thing could be a podcast in and of its, you know, in itself. Like that whole story is so great because like the difference between this and I believe like the Cat House series again is that, you know, it's a much higher level. The cost is so much more. Unlike when you go to Patreon.
Yes.
Because it is totally affordable to get exclusive content. No sex workers.
Yes. Here we are in the business section.
Yeah. The business section.
Well, and your credit card won't come back as New York Steakhouse when you went to New York Confidential. It'll come back as Patreon for Crime Writers On.
New York Steakhouse is
that
the
story.
dumbest name.
No, because you put it on your business card. That's what people did. Yes, that's what. Oh, yes, I heard a story, but I thought that was in Dallas. Anyway, that doesn't matter.
No, they said that in the podcast.
I know, but I had heard a previous story from a friend anyway. Not that I have gone to the New York Steakhouse, but it'll just say Patreon, and what you'll get, all sorts of amazing things. You'll get the Crime Writers On after show. On this week's after show, Rebecca's going to lead a discussion. You may remember our recent Crime of the Week, where we talked about how Google's new artificial intelligence program made a credible sounding podcast with different voices based on like stuff that got like thrown into AI. Well, this is actually becoming more serious within the podcast industry, and Rebecca has thoughts and wants to know ours.
I also want to talk a little bit about what you guys think about the New York Times putting their podcast behind a paywall.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
If you want Serial, you get the first 2 episodes, but that's it.
Modern Love, Serial, The Daily, you get 3 episodes. That's it. That's all you can hear.
Good stuff going on there. Yeah. Yeah. If you want some other exclusive podcasts, because we have more than 650 exclusive.
650?
They would just keep adding up. We have so many things a month for just a small, sustaining membership on Patreon. It keeps us going. In addition to the after show, We've got Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. On the next podcast, Toby is going to be talking about The Sullivanians. That's the name of the book. And Toby, give us a quick primer. What is this story about, and who's your panel coming?
So the story is about the Sullivanian Institute Sullivan Institute was a psychoanalysis institute. You know, it was Freudian. It is based in New York City and got like a bunch of sort of artists and writers and types like that, and eventually grew to having hundreds of people. And it was this very sort of controversial thing about distancing yourself from your family and living communally and raising your children communally. And it really kind of turned into sort of a cult. So that's what this book is about, is sort of these strange ideas and how it kind of goes from originally being a few analysts to becoming this cult with like 300 or 400 people in it, which is just crazy. So that's what we're going to be talking about. It's an interesting book. We're going to have deep dive favorites, Janet Varney.
Yay.
And Julia Lowry Henderson.
Yay.
And then a newcomer, Sarah Krasenstein, who is a writer who I interviewed during Strange Arrivals and thought would be a good deep dive guest. So it should be a fun conversation.
We also have, for your listening pleasure, Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, where she solves mysteries, or at least mysteries to her.
Like, what the fuck is a ski mountain doing in a mall? Is that a mystery?
Yeah.
But actually, Laura, I think that coming up, you're going to be covering the Sasquatch Calling Festival. Is that right?
Yeah, the Sasquatch Calling Contest and Festival in beautiful Whitehall, New York that I went to recently. And I got behind the scenes with some of the folks who were in that calling contest, who told me how they got involved and why they knew how to call like Sasquatches, because they had Sasquatches outside their houses and they communed with Sasquatches. There was a lot that happened at that festival, and I got all the intel.
Oh, geez. We have an Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
My thing is a very easy and fun thing. If you're the kind of person like me who like isn't good at keep maintaining their jewelry and it always looks like very dirty, like your engagement ring is like full of stuff. I just bought this Connoisseur's Premium Edition jewelry cleaner. It's like a little jar.
Yep, I saw the jar.
You just like drop your stuff in it, and look how well it works. Look.
No, shiny.
Isn't that incredible?
Shiny.
I really love it.
You're like a
It's so
high-end
cheap.
escort.
Oh, yes. Just like that. They're going to make a show out of me.
And Toby Ball, what are your listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations?
So I'm going to start off with a little literary suggestion. It's the Nevermore Bookstore, a hot kink, positive, morally gray, grumpy sunshine rom-com. And in parentheses, Townsend Harbor.
Wow.
What's the name of that book?
Lars writing it down.
I think it's a hot kink, positive, morally gray, grumpy sunshine rom-com.
All right.
All right.
Huh.
This is a new one. I actually, somebody who should have bought something on our Amazon storefront, but forgot to, reached out with what they bought.
What is it?
It is the effing large in-oven thermometer for electric or gas oven, 2 packs.
All right.
Large hook baking thermometer, cooking thermometer with NSF quality and non-fading color dial, oven safe after long time cooking.
Ooh.
So effing large.
Effing large.
Effing
It's like one of those big ass fans.
Yeah. When you got a big-ass turkey, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, well, you
Yeah.
can shop us first at amazon.com/shop/Crime Writers On. We earn commissions on qualified purchases.
Kevin, I have a quick thing that I want to invite listeners to check out if they're interested. On November 6th, I will be interviewing author Ariel Lawhan at the Portsmouth Music Hall in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Tickets should be going up on their music hall website soon. She is the author of the best-selling novel Frozen River, which is about sort of like a detective-ish novel that takes place like in post-revolutionary Massachusetts. But yeah, I just finished the book. I'm going to be interviewing this author, Ariel Lawhan. And if you are interested in coming to see that, you can get tickets at the music hall website. So Kevin, before we end the business section, I have to ask, do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Jenna Robertson and Jessica Gilmer.
Oh.
Bless you.
Bless you guys, Jenna and Jessica. You don't have the same name this time, though, which is disappointing. Thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. Thanks to everyone who does. Thanks to those who are thinking about it. I'm going to push you over the edge right now. Just do it. Go to Partners in Crime Media on Patreon. All All right, Kevin, does that end the business section?
This ends the business section.
I'm going to go and fade that music out right now.
Now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I came here to make something of myself.
You want your name up in big, flashy lights.
Before Rosemary's Baby,
I chose you.
evil was born.
They did something to me.
Starring Julia Garner.
I need to know what's happening.
And Diane Wiest.
This is a role that you were born to play. Baby's here to stay.
Apartment 7A, now streaming on Paramount Plus, or buy it on digital. Rated R.
So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor right now?
We're sponsored by Quince.
Oh, boy.
So we are kind of officially out of summer. We're into autumn. And now it's time to switch things up, move into a new season. And I think, we got to look right past Halloween. You got to start thinking about Thanksgiving and Christmas and cooler, crisper weather.
Yeah.
And that means you got to get your cashmere sweater from Quince, priced from $50.
Yes.
And Rebecca, have you been keeping them afloat with all of your sweaters you've been buying from Quince?
I've got a couple bookmarked right now, Kevin. Right now, my favorite is this very cute kind of cropped, sort of quasi off the shoulder one. It comes in a color called I think it's called strawberry cream. It also comes in a color called moss. And what's held me back, the only thing that's held me back is it wasn't the price, was which one to get. I love Quince so much. The quality of their cashmere for the price is incredible.
Well, I was going to say that, if you could just get all of them, maybe you should.
Well, thanks.
I'm thinking twice about that right now, actually. So, switching seasons is a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials.
Just go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
Hi, my name's Patrick Adams. You may know me as Mike Ross on the TV series Suits.
And I'm Sarah Rafferty, and I play Donna Paulson on Suits.
And we have a podcast called Sidebar, where every week we watch and discuss an episode of the show.
Because here's the thing, neither of us have really watched it.
That's true, at least until now.
So we're going to cover all 9 seasons,
share behind-the-scenes stories,
and talk to our co-stars and friends like Gina Torres and Aaron Korsh.
So look, if you love Suits, amazing. This podcast is for you.
And if you've never watched Suits, also amazing. You can join us and we'll watch it together.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun. You can find Sidebar on the SiriusXM app, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode.
Life can throw a lot your way in the morning. You might be battling drop-off times, while your kids are battling imaginary monsters or their shoelaces. But no matter what life brings, Life cereal puts a smile on everyone's face. With 24 grams of whole grains and unexpected sweetness in every serving, it's sure to please even the pickiest eaters. Help start your mornings with Life cereal.
I really love my life.
So, Toby, how do you feel about how the stories are woven together here? Because we have, the escort service, we have Chemo's story, and then we also have, inexplicably, I don't understand how this worked because it's a military court. He has a defendant that is being tried for crimes at Abu Ghraib.
Yeah, so there's these two sort of random military cases that he has, one involving Abu Ghraib, and the other one is about the killing of some Iraqi civilians. So it's not really clear, why he's involved in the military justice system. They just seem kind of random and out of nowhere. Was it necessary? What does it show? I mean, for the most part, it seemed like the second one, which has to do with this guy, Will Huntsacker, who murdered some civilians, that Paul kind of advises him and then doesn't show up when the guy has to make his plea.
Oh, Paul.
And that's because Paul's in jail.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if losing focus is quite the right way of putting it, but it was suddenly, those things didn't seem like they had anything to do with anything else that was going on, which was more about him being corrupt in sort of the New York, New Jersey area.
Yeah.
And somehow this gets involved. But I wish they'd done a little bit more of why is this going on rather than here's another random thing about this guy.
Right. I mean, he did try to get, as on his witness list, he did try to get George W. Bush on his witness list, which was pretty ballsy.
Yeah. It would have been a hot move if it had worked out for him.
Would he have gotten immunity? That's what I want to know. Laura, so Toby just mentioned New Jersey. You're in New Jersey. Do you feel like New Jersey is an important setting for a story like this?
I feel like New Jersey is a character in this. Like as I'm sitting here and I'm looking around New Jersey, and I have friends from college who are from New Jersey, and I just feel like it's such a distinct sense of place here. I remember going to this party, like a graduation party at the end of college for my friend who was in New Jersey, and this other guy's father was there who worked in the waste management industry. And I remember him giving me this big speech about, if you ever get into any trouble, you call Mr. So-and-so, which was him, and I will take care of you. And I was like, okie dokie. And Newark in particular is talked about a lot in this podcast. The host is talking about the setting and how it relates to his own life. And he remembers going there and like hanging out on the front steps at his grandmother's place. And when he got older, kind of venturing out, but at the same time, knowing that they couldn't go in the street because at any moment, a stolen car could come flying by. There was always sort of this element of danger that was there that was unseen, and it could have been anything. So I think having that as the setting for this is just so, it's very fitting, and obviously it's where the story took place, but I feel like it's really a character unto itself.
Yeah. Fun fact, New Jersey is one of the biggest farming states in the United States. They have almost 10,000 farms. Yes. It's a huge agricultural state, and it has the most expensive agricultural land anywhere in the country because it's, in such a high property place. But yes, that used to be a Trivial Pursuit question of like, what state has the most farms of any state in the country? And it was New Jersey. Yeah, and I don't know if they have the most still, but it's still a huge, huge agriculture state.
Not the biggest, but yeah.
Right. I was about to say, it's like no Monsanto. It's all like smaller farms. Nebraska's got 4 farms, but they take up the entire state.
Exactly. So Kevin, is this one of those podcasts? It's very hard to tell how much the host is actually involved in the reporting. But the thing that we've learned is that sometimes the host is involved in reporting and you just can't tell in any way. And I don't know what's going on here. What do you think? Because I felt a disconnect between the host and the content sometimes.
Yeah, I just think Jinx, is good, but I don't get the sense that he did any of the journalism involved in this. They don't sort of like kind of hint at that at all. So I think just primarily he's the narrator. He's got a nice read. He's doing a good job, but I just kind of was thinking, is there more to this than him just, doing the voiceover? I think it's a pretty good podcast, even though like the fundamentals here are very standard. You go, soundbite, voiceover, soundbite, voiceover. But the story itself, I thought was like really interesting. And so that held my attention. And so also just to point out that, this is a Wondery podcast. So we get the 2 Wondery things. Yes. One is a great theme song.
A theme song.
Whether
or not you want to call it great is up to you.
I liked it. And the other thing is unnecessary sound design.
Oh, like what?
That's happening outside my window right now, for real.
I'm really glad that we didn't get any sound design for the escorting parts. That would be weird.
Ooh.
Yes.
Oh, squeaky couch. Oh my God.
So Toby, finally, like this lawyer isn't just a crooked lawyer. He ultimately, we learn, is a real criminal. Like he's not just a shady, takes advantage of the system, plugging things in here and there and weighing the scales. Like he's bad guy, right?
Yeah. You get hints of it, like that he's money laundering and things like that. But then towards the end, you find out that, he owns or partially owns this restaurant, and they go in and there are like, as they say, kilos of cocaine, which is worth quite a bit of money. Yeah. So he gets busted and he goes on trial and decides he's going to represent himself, which is always a good idea. Although he does have another lawyer sitting next to him, helping him out, and manages somehow to get a hung jury, which I would assume he would consider a win.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is one of those things where whether he went from corrupt lawyer to just outright criminal in sort of a process, or whether he was both things at once, and it's just the way the narrative of the story goes that you hear about the criminality towards the end. Like, I don't know. But, after working for the government, he pretty quickly goes from that to being full on, like, in the soup. Like, you don't get much of a sense of his journey, really, I would say.
He's not really in the podcast. That's the thing. That's my criticism, is he's not in the podcast. It's like we're talking about somebody that someone knows, it almost feels like. Right.
Well, it's like sometimes they have those books where it's like, it's about some guy, but it's all told in like chapters with people who experience them, but never the person themselves. Yeah, but you don't get much of a sort of narrative arc on him. It's just like, here's some stuff that happened. Here's some other stuff that happened. This is just some other stuff that happened. And this is how it all ended.
Hi, my name's Patrick Adams. You may know me as Mike Ross on the TV series Suits.
And I'm Sarah Rafferty, and I play Donna Paulson on Suits.
And we have a podcast called Sidebar, where every week we watch and discuss an episode of the show.
Because here's the thing, neither of us have really watched it.
That's true, at least until now.
So we're going to cover all 9 seasons,
share behind-the-scenes stories,
and talk to our co-stars and friends like Gina Torres and Aaron Korsh.
So look, if you love Suits, amazing. This podcast is for you.
And if you've never watched Suits, also amazing. You can join us and we'll watch it together.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun. You can find Sidebar on the SiriusXM app, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode.
Life can throw a lot your way in the morning. You might be battling drop-off times, while your kids are battling imaginary monsters or their shoelaces. But no matter what life brings, Life cereal puts a smile on everyone's face. With 24 grams of whole grains and unexpected sweetness in every serving, it's sure to please even the pickiest eaters. Help start your mornings with Life cereal.
I really love my life.
If your child is struggling in school, then IXL is right for your family. IXL is an online learning program for kids that covers math, language arts, science, and social studies. Backed by research, kids using IXL are scoring higher on tests. It's no wonder it's used in 95% of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Plus, a month of IXL costs less than an hour of tutoring. Get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when you sign up today at IXL.com/20. Visit IXL.com/20 to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price.
Want to connect with a family member who doesn't speak your language? Then check out the language learning program Rosetta Stone on desktop or as an app. Rosetta Stone is designed to immerse you in the language you're learning through an intuitive process. Plus, the True Accent feature even gives you feedback on your pronunciation. And with a lifetime membership, you have access to all 25 offered languages. Get started today. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50 to get 50% off your lifetime membership now. That's rosettastone.com/pod50 for 50% off.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the podcast Criminal Attorney from Wondery? Toby Ball, do you want to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down for Criminal Attorney?
Do I want to, or am I just going to do it?
Just going to do it.
I'm just going to go right ahead. So look, this is like a very competently put together podcast. The journalism is good. The story is interesting. You know, the little Wondery quirks aside, it's a fine listen. There's just something that really, for me at least, distinguished it from other sort of well-made, competent true crime podcasts. So, you know, it's kind of a mild thumbs up. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but is it going to be haunting your dreams or having you thinking about it 2 or 3 weeks later? Like, it's not that kind of podcast. It's sort of you're driving along, you're listening to it, you're like, oh, that's interesting, that's cool. But then when it's done, it's done. So, yeah, mild thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a mild thumbs up too. Criminal Attorney fits in that peg that I like to call like mid. It's definitely like a mid podcast. It's not hard to listen to, but it's not getting a bigger thumbs up for me, a more enthusiastic one, because as I said in the review, I feel very disconnected from the central figure in here. He has almost like no presence in the podcast, like not like tape, not like, you know, historical stuff. It's just like everyone's talking about him, and it's like hearing anecdotes about somebody that you don't get to know very well, except for the shitty things they did. And I felt like it was clinical in that way, and that's why I'm not giving it a more enthusiastic review. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Criminal Attorney?
Yeah, I'm also a mild thumbs up on this. This is one of those podcasts that I listened to and I was like, I don't love it. I don't hate it. There's nothing horribly wrong with it. At first, I was like kind of connecting with the female FBI agent character. Like, we hear her kind of out hanging out in the beginning. We hear about some things that might happen to her. And I'm like, okay, she might be somebody we're going to follow along with. And we do hear from her. But I felt like as I was listening to this, there were some parts where I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of wild. Oh, that's kind of interesting. But I didn't feel like a sense of suspense as I was listening in terms of like, I can't wait for the next episode to come out. But at the same time, it wasn't horrible. It was like just a well done podcast, but it wasn't something that I'm going to be recommending to people like, oh my God, you got to go listen to this podcast. So it's a mild thumbs up for me.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm a mild thumbs up. I mean, this was competently put together because I think it kind of rides on the strength of the source material here, which is an interesting look at this one criminal attorney. we don't get an abundance of different voices. That's kind of what I noticed you talking about, like your disconnect. It's efficient in that way, and probably the result of having fewer players still around or those who are willing to talk. Not a big knock on it, but that's just kind of what I thought. I think the length of the episode seemed about right, 30 minutes, including ads. I mean, they didn't try to pad it like with an additional 10 minutes or something like that. They knew how much story they had, and they let the story lead the production and not the other way around. But, competent telling, can't really knock it too much, so I'm going with a mild thumbs up.
Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the crime of the week. A Georgia sheriff is being accused of mismanagement after it was revealed he ordered his deputies to take names after Burger King got his order wrong. Body cam video from last March shows Cobb County Sheriff Craig Owens, while in plain clothes, called for help after the restaurant messed up his request for a Whopper with no mayo cut in half. Geez, why go to Burger King if you want a burger with no mayo? The deputies...
You have it your way, Rebecca.
I'm sorry, but the mayo is the point of Burger King. The deputies responded with lights and sirens, then found employees had locked the doors out of fear of the guy in their parking lot. The deputies didn't identify the man as the sheriff and said no one was under arrest. They just wanted the owner's name so the unhappy customer could file a complaint. Owens' call for help is being played up by his opponent in next month's election. He's calling it an abuse of power and a waste of resources. The sheriff says he was just asking for the deputies' help, just as they would do for any citizen. So panel, what is the next errand this sheriff will ask his deputies to do for him? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Oh, there's so many options here. Pick up his dry cleaning, take his car to the car wash, deliver a birthday gift to his mistress. I mean, the list could go on and on.
What do you think, Toby Ball? What's the next errand this sheriff is going to ask these guys to do for him?
They're going to show up to tase the woman at Starbucks who didn't call out Merry Christmas when that's specifically what he said his name was.
Oh. What do you think, Kevin?
It's going to go rough up Grimace.
Oh, Grimace.
Hey, Grimace is the big Mets mascot this year. You can't do that.
Yeah, I love Grimace. Love Grimace.
Hey, that's why it's so horrible.
That's going to do it for us, though. But before we go, Laura Bricker, I have to ask, do we have a cat of the week this week?
This cat of the week comes to us from Jennifer Little McCord, and it is Jennifer's two puppies. And they went to their first ever beach day. They were very brave. Bucky and Maddie, they were suspicious, but they loved it. They had a good time, and I love the little outfits they have on at the beach. It's very cute. So Jennifer, thank you for sending this along.
Dogs do love the beach. All right, Laura Bricker, folks want to submit animals for your consideration. Of course, they can email us at crimewriterson@gmail.com. But if they want to reach you on social media, how would they do that?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Instagram and Twitter.
What about you, Toby? You've been posting a lot of updates about your podcast and other interesting history bits on your social media. So how can folks see that?
Well, first of all, since we're not doing a live Thursday thing, I'll just quickly plug the next Rip Current episode, which drops on Thursday, which is we start diving into the radical underground in San Francisco with Sarah Jane's mentor in that scene, who's a guy named Popeye Jackson. And that's episode 8. But You can find out more about that at TobyBallNH on Twitter and TikTok, and at TobyBall603 on the Instagram.
Kevin Flynn, how can you be found on social media, and what should folks follow?
What should they follow?
Yes.
Follow me.
I'm giving you an opportunity to plug a different social media channel that you are in charge of.
Sure. You should find me on Instagram at Kevin P. Flynn, I think.
Yes.
Most of the time, though, I'm putting up content on all the other stuff, Rebecca, that includes following us on Twitter at Crime Writers On and on YouTube. And you also can follow all of our reels on Instagram and
check out These Are Their Stories.
Social
media, it's incredible. Little clips from the show. It's so funny. All right. And if you want to follow me everywhere, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On, as Kevin says. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll also get the Crime Writers On After Show, Married with Podcast, Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, and my podcast about the Karen Read case and all the corruption going on in Massachusetts called The Readathon. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the wonderful Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this show is Kevin. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we also say, no Toby, no podcast.
We can make that problem go away.
Say hi to your mother for me. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
It's weird. It's real snow.
Yeah.
Sorry, my burner phone is ringing. It's real snow. It's a little weird because it's like they bring in new snow.
Can you answer the question again when your phone's not ringing in the background?
It does come through.
Lars, forgetting
I'm sorry,
the medium
I was
that we
getting
make.
a call from the prison.
Okay. All right. So
you need to take it.
So I asked the question was, how was the snow? And you said
it's weird.
Life can throw a lot your way in the morning. You might be battling drop-off times, while your kids are battling imaginary monsters or their shoelaces. But no matter what life brings, Life cereal puts a smile on everyone's face. With 24 grams of whole grains and unexpected sweetness in every serving, it's sure to please even the pickiest eaters. Help start your mornings with Life cereal.
I really love my life.